The fluorescent lights of West Side Fitness cast a harsh glow over the polished equipment, reflecting off the mirrors that lined the walls. It was a Tuesday evening, and the after-work crowd had begun to filter in, filling the space with the familiar sounds of clanking weights and heavy breathing. I'd been coming to this gym for about 6 months now, ever since I moved to the city for my new job in graphic design. My name is Alex, and I'd always been somewhat athletic in high school, but college had taken its toll on my physique. Now, at 27, I was determined to get back into shape, to reclaim some of the confidence I'd lost along the way. I was in the middle of my usual routine, a carefully planned mix of cardio and strength training that I'd pieced together from various fitness YouTubers. The bench press was next on my list, and I made my way over to the free weights section, towel draped around my neck, water bottle in hand. That's when I first noticed him. He was already at the bench press station, his form impeccable as he lowered the barbell to his chest and pushed it back up with controlled power. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and a light sheen of sweat made his olive skin glow under the gym lights. I couldn't help but stare for a moment, admiring not just his physique but the focused determination in his eyes. He caught me looking and flashed a quick smile that made my heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with my recent cardio session. I hesitated, considering whether to wait for another bench to open up, but he was already sitting up, gesturing to the bench next to his. "Don't worry, I'm almost done here," he said, his voice deeper than I expected. "I'm just finishing my last set." "Thanks," I managed, setting my water bottle down and adjusting the weights on the adjacent bench. I tried to focus on my own workout, but I was acutely aware of his presence beside me, the rhythm of his breathing, the occasional grunt of exertion. As I laid back on the bench and positioned my hands on the barbell, I heard him speak again. "Your grip is a bit wide," he said, and before I could respond, he was there, leaning over me, his hands adjusting mine on the bar. "Like this," he whispered, his breath warm against my neck. "It'll engage your chest more effectively." The sensation of his fingers guiding mine, combined with the closeness of his face to mine, sent a shiver down my spine that I couldn't quite explain away as gym nerves. I mumbled a thank you and proceeded with my set, hyper-aware of his eyes on me, assessing my form. "I'm Nate, by the way," he said as I completed my first set, extending a hand to help me sit up. His grip was firm, confident. "Alex," I replied, trying to sound casual despite the strange flutter in my stomach. "Thanks for the tip. I'm still figuring out the proper form for a lot of these exercises." "We all start somewhere," Nate said with a shrug. "I've been at it for years, and I'm still learning. If you want, I could give you a few pointers sometime." And that was how it began, a chance encounter at the bench press that would evolve into something I never expected to find at a gym, or anywhere else for that matter. Over the next few weeks, our gym schedules seemed to align more and more frequently. At first, I told myself it was coincidence, but soon I found myself checking the time he usually arrived, planning my workouts to coincide with his. We fell into a natural rhythm, spotting each other on heavier lifts, sharing equipment, and exchanging workout tips. Nate was a physical therapist, which explained his extensive knowledge of body mechanics and proper form. He had a way of explaining exercises that made complex movements seem simple, breaking them down into manageable steps. But it wasn't just his expertise that drew me to him. It was his genuine enthusiasm, the way his eyes lit up when talking about fitness goals and the satisfaction of pushing past perceived limitations. "It's all about mind-muscle connection," he explained one day as we worked on cable flies. He stood behind me, his hands lightly touching my shoulders. "Close your eyes for a second," he instructed, his voice low near my ear. I complied, feeling strangely vulnerable yet safe in his guidance. "Now, as you pull, really focus on feeling your chest muscles contract. Imagine them doing all the work." I followed his directions, and the sensation was immediately different, more intense. When I opened my eyes and turned to thank him, our faces were inches apart, and for a moment, neither of us moved away. Something unspoken passed between us before he stepped back, clearing his throat and moving to adjust the weight on his machine. That moment replayed in my mind for days afterward. I'd never been particularly attracted to men before. At least, I'd never allowed myself to explore that possibility. Growing up in a small Midwestern town, such thoughts were quickly buried, ignored until they faded into background noise. But with Nate, those feelings were becoming harder to dismiss. Let me explain why this matters. In that gym, surrounded by the traditional hypermasculinity of grunting men and clanking weights, I was experiencing something that challenged everything I thought I knew about myself. It wasn't just attraction. It was a connection that transcended the physical, a meeting of minds and spirits that happened to be housed in male bodies. Our workouts together became the highlight of my week. We pushed each other, celebrated new personal records, and commiserated over particularly grueling sessions. The gym became a sacred space where we could exist in our own bubble, where the outside world and its judgments couldn't reach us. "You're dropping your elbow again," Nate whispered during a shoulder press, his lips so close to my ear that I could feel their movement. He placed his hand on my arm, guiding it into the correct position. "There. Feel the difference." I nodded, not trusting my voice in that moment. His touch lingered a second longer than necessary, and when our eyes met in the mirror, I saw something there that matched the confusion and desire swirling within me. The tension between us built gradually, like adding weight to a barbell over time, testing our strength, our resolve. There were moments when I thought I might be imagining it all. The lingering glances, the unnecessary touches, the way he always seemed to find a reason to be near me. But then there were moments of such clarity, such undeniable connection, that I couldn't dismiss them as mere friendship. One evening, after a particularly intense leg day, we found ourselves alone in the stretching area. Nate was helping me with a hamstring stretch, his strong hands pressing gently on my back to deepen the position. "You're getting more flexible," he commented, his voice softer than usual in the quiet corner of the gym. "Thanks to you," I replied, wincing slightly as he increased the pressure. "Breathe through it," he instructed, and then, leaning closer, "Trust me, Alex. I won't let you get hurt." There was something in his tone that went beyond the physical stretch we were engaged in, a promise that extended to the fragile thing growing between us. When I stood up, our bodies were close, too close for casual friendship, and neither of us stepped away. "Do you ever?" I started, then faltered, courage deserting me. "Ever what?" Nate prompted, his eyes searching mine. "Nothing," I said, reaching for my water bottle, a convenient distraction. "Just wondering if you ever get tired of being everyone's personal trainer here." Nate's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "I only offer advice to people I care about," he said simply, and the implication hung in the air between us, unaddressed but unmistakable. The turning point came during a bench press session, ironically returning us to where we'd first met. I was attempting a new personal record, and Nate was spotting me. The weight was heavier than anything I'd tried before, and as I struggled with the third rep, my arms began to shake. "You've got this," Nate encouraged, his hands hovering near the bar, ready to assist if needed. "Focus on your breathing. Push through your heels." I gritted my teeth, arms trembling with the effort. Just as I was about to give up, Nate leaned down, his face close to mine, and whispered, "I believe in you, Alex. More than you know." Something about those words, about the intensity in his eyes, gave me a surge of strength. I completed the rep, and as Nate helped me rack the weight, the triumph of the moment overwhelmed me. I sat up quickly, euphoric from the achievement and the adrenaline, and without thinking, I threw my arms around him in an impulsive hug. He stiffened for a moment, surprised, before his arms wrapped around me, returning the embrace with equal fervor. We stayed like that longer than was appropriate for a gym celebration, our hearts racing against each other's chests. When we finally pulled apart, there was a new awareness between us, a line that had been crossed. "I think we should talk," Nate said quietly, glancing around at the other gym-goers, none of whom seemed to have noticed our moment. "Not here, though." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop nearby after we'd both showered and changed. The walk there gave me time to process what was happening, to confront the feelings I'd been avoiding. By the time I pushed open the door to the cafe and spotted Nate at a corner table, I had made up my mind to be honest, whatever the consequences. "I've never felt this way about a man before," I admitted after we'd exchanged awkward greetings and settled with our drinks. "I don't even know if what I'm feeling is real or if it's just admiration or something else." Nate listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. When I finally ran out of words, he reached across the table and placed his hand over mine, a bold move in the public space. "I knew from the first day," he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "There was something about you, Alex. Something that drew me in. I've been out since college, but I've never pushed my feelings onto someone else, especially someone who might be figuring things out. But I can't deny what's between us, and I don't think you can either." He was right. Despite my confusion, despite the voice in my head that echoed with my father's disapproval and my small town's prejudices, I couldn't deny the connection we shared. It transcended physical attraction. It was a recognition of something essential in each other, a harmony that felt rare and precious. "I'm scared," I admitted, turning my hand to clasp his properly. "Not just of what this means for me, for how I see myself, but of messing up something good. You've become important to me, Nate. I don't want to lose that." His smile was gentle, understanding. "Fear is natural when something matters. But here's what I know about strength training. Growth only happens when you push past comfort. The same is true for everything else in life." We talked for hours that evening, sharing stories of our pasts, our dreams, our fears. Nate told me about coming out to his family, the initial struggle and eventual acceptance. I shared my small-town upbringing, my vague sense of difference that I'd never allowed myself to examine closely. As the cafe began to close around us, we reluctantly said goodnight, with a promise to meet at the gym the next day as usual. But things were different now. The unspoken had been spoken, the tension acknowledged. Our workouts took on a new dimension, charged with awareness and possibility. Nate's guidance became more intimate, his whispered cues against my neck now carrying undeniable intention. "Engage your core," he would murmur, his hand resting lightly on my abdomen. "Feel the strength at your center." And I would, not just physically but emotionally, drawing courage from his presence, his belief in me. We were careful in the public space of the gym, maintaining a facade of trainer and client, friends at most. But the current between us was undeniable, at least to us. The climax of our dance came unexpectedly, after weeks of this new awareness. We had stayed late at the gym, taking advantage of the emptier space to work on Olympic lifts that required more room. I was practicing clean and jerks, a complex movement that I'd been struggling to master. Nate stood nearby, calling out adjustments and encouragement. On my final attempt of the evening, everything clicked. My body moved in perfect coordination, the barbell rising smoothly from floor to shoulders, then overhead in one fluid motion. As I dropped the weight with a triumphant clang, Nate was there, his face alight with pride. "That was beautiful," he said, and the admiration in his voice made me stand taller. "I had a good teacher," I replied, breathless from exertion and his proximity. We were alone in that corner of the gym, the late hour having driven most patrons home. Nate stepped closer, his hand coming up to rest on my shoulder, then sliding to the nape of my neck in a gesture that could no longer be mistaken for professional guidance. "Alex," he said, my name a question and an answer all at once. I closed the distance between us. Months of tension and discovery culminating in a kiss that felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. His lips were soft yet insistent against mine, his hand firm at my neck, anchoring me to the moment. When we broke apart, I was trembling in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. "I've been wanting to do that since you first sat next to me on that bench press," Nate admitted, his forehead resting against mine. "I think I have too," I replied, surprised by the truth of it. I just didn't know how to recognize it. That night marked the beginning of something new, something that extended beyond the walls of West Side Fitness, but remained rooted in the place where we'd found each other. We began dating properly, dinners, movies, hikes on weekends, but our gym sessions remained special, the foundation of our connection. Navigating a relationship was new territory for me, especially with a man. There were moments of doubt, of questioning whether I could handle the challenges that came with being in a same-sex relationship. The first time we held hands in public, I felt exposed, as if everyone was staring, judging. Nate sensed my discomfort and gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "We don't have to do anything you're not ready for," he said, offering to let go. But I held on tighter. I insisted. "I just need time to get used to it." And I did, with each small step. Introducing Nate to friends from work, updating my relationship status online, eventually telling my parents. I grew more comfortable in my new reality. It wasn't always easy. My father struggled with the news, his silence more painful than any angry words might have been. Some friends drifted away, uncomfortable with the change in me, or perhaps more accurately, with the truth that had always been there, now acknowledged. But for every difficulty, there were moments of unexpected joy and acceptance. My mother, after her initial shock, called to say she just wanted me to be happy. My closest friend from college drove 4 hours to meet Nate, declaring him definitely an upgrade from my previous girlfriends. And at the gym, where it all began, we found a community that largely accepted us as we were. Two people who pushed each other to be better, stronger, more authentic. 6 months into our relationship, we decided to become workout partners in an official capacity, signing up for a fitness competition that required teamwork and coordination. Training together took on new meaning as we synchronized our movements, learned to anticipate each other's strengths and compensate for weaknesses. The competition itself was grueling, a test of endurance, strength, and mental fortitude, but crossing the finish line together, exhausted and exhilarated, felt like a metaphor for what we'd built. "We make a good team," Nate said as we collapsed on the grass afterward, medals around our necks more precious for being shared. "The best," I agreed, no longer hesitant to lean into his side, to claim publicly what had begun as a whispered connection. Looking back now, I'm amazed at how a chance encounter at a bench press could change the course of my life so completely. It wasn't just about discovering my sexuality, though that was significant. It was about finding someone who saw me clearly, who challenged me to grow not just physically, but in all aspects of my life. Nate's whispered cues against my neck had guided me not just to better form, but to a more authentic version of myself. We still work out together most days, still push each other to new personal records, and celebrate each achievement. But now, when he leans in close to correct my form or offer encouragement, I can turn my head to meet his lips with mine, no longer afraid of what such a gesture means or who might see. The gym remains our special place, the setting for our beginning and the ongoing backdrop to our story. And sometimes, when I'm lying on the bench press and Nate leans down to spot me, whispering technical cues that have become terms of endearment between us, I'm transported back to that first day, grateful for the man who sat next to me and changed everything with words breathed against my skin. In the end, what I found at Westside Fitness wasn't just physical strength or improved health. It was the courage to recognize love in an unexpected form, to embrace it despite fear and uncertainty. And that, I've learned, is the greatest strength of all. The power to be vulnerably, authentically oneself, even when it means reimagining everything you thought you knew about who you are and what you want. As Nate often reminds me during particularly challenging workouts, the resistance is what builds the muscle. The same is true for the heart. It's in pushing against our limitations, our fears, our preconceptions, that we discover what we're truly capable of. In the gym, in love, and in life. Total_char_count. 18,573.